Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin reporting to you live from the basement of the Hay Adams Hotel, an iconic Washington location. I'm right outside the men's room, as Sean and Dan pointed out in the pregame show. So we may have some special guests. You never know. Thank you for joining on this day with President Trump at 9 o'clock this evening, 12 hours from now. We'll be speaking to the joint session of Congress. This will be the biggest audience he has had since Inauguration Day. And a lot of anticipation building, slower than usual. There have been fewer leaks than usual, not leaks in air quotes about what he plans to talk about tonight. But most people believe he'll spend a fair amount of time talking about what he's accomplished and what he wants to accomplish, and clues abound.
I will say though, when you say a fair amount of time,
Yeah.
as someone who is a little under the weather today, I am very concerned about how late this could go.
Well, let's go right to the over under. I say 80 minutes, over or under 80 minutes,
I
over
have
or
a
under.
head cold. I can't do math.
Way over.
Hour and 20 minutes. He'll go longer than an hour and 20.
Under, yeah.
Yep.
I'll take.
Yep.
How much do you want on that one?
Dan,
I mean, the number of applause. I
Dan,
mean, he'll
Dan,
just
you're
say
taking,
hi and they'll.
you're taking the over. You're taking the
Yep.
over 80 minutes.
Yep.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, Sean, you're taking the under.
No, absolutely
Or
not.
you're both taking.
Oh yeah.
I'm taking the under. He will not go over 80 minutes. All right. The First Lady's box is filled with people who are representative of a lot of the issues Donald Trump has campaigned on and governed on. We'll talk about that in a moment. In any event, he has no public events before, as of now, before he leaves up for Capitol Hill at 8:30 with the First Lady. The pool today, probably the most interesting thing to me is the new media representative is the Federalist. The Federalist is in the White House pool, in-town travel pool. And he doesn't.
By the way, real interesting side note: when Melania was up yesterday on Capitol Hill, there was an expanded pool for that as well. Like they're actually really going. It's not just
right.
the president.
So the schedule has him departing Capitol Hill at 11:30. Okay. Now, presidents leave later normally than the schedule says because they linger. But somebody pulled the old schedules. I don't think there's ever been an announced departure time of 11:30 after the State of the Union, right? That's like.
But I wonder. There's two possibilities. This is why I'm with Dan on the over. I think that they've seen the speech. They know it's going to go long. I think this is like a prevent defense. It's running the clock out. You wait, you keep going, and then you wait to allow Alyssa Slotkin to go until 11:30 when everybody's exhausted and ready to go to bed. I mean, there's that possibility.
She'll speak even if he's on the
floor. No. She'll speak, but who's she speaking to at 11:30 at night Eastern?
No, what I'm saying is if he's still on the floor at 11:30, she'll have spoken by then, unless he goes to 11:20. Do you think he's going to go for 2 hours?
I think he'll take a while to get out too. He's going to take a lot of pictures and people shake his hands. Everyone on the right wants photo.
Right. All right. Maybe you're right.
You think the networks? Okay, so he's still hanging out on the floor.
Now, if he's hanging out on the floor and she goes, they'll take her. If she does the traditional thing and waits till he's off to go, then she could be pushed to 11:30, I suppose.
Do they do split screens?
Yeah.
I think certain networks will keep a thing on him.
I do too.
Certain networks would.
And does any Democrat
that gets back to my
audio.
prevent defense, which is you own the screen and you force her to choose to go or to wait till 11:30 at night. I mean, I think it's actually kind of a brilliant strategy.
All right, raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. If you're here on the two-way platform, this program is based on the morning meetings held by the network news divisions every day. I'll run through the daybook in full in just a moment. Then Sean, Dan, and I will kick it around. Special guest Meghan McCain expected to join us at 9:30 for our cameo. And then were your questions if you're watching on YouTube or X. Please, if you write comments, don't write smack in the chat. Peace, love, and understanding. The presumption of grace for all, regardless of how you're feeling about President Trump and his speech today. 9:30, just a little while from now, the vice president will be introducing his pal, Elbridge Colby, before the Senate Armed Services Committee, where he is up to be confirmed for the number 3 job at the Pentagon, although he's not every Republican's favorite choice. This seems a little like overkill.
Well, that's why he's there. I mean, it's not like he just said, hey, do you want me to come introduce you?
Yeah. So he's helping his friend through a somewhat rocky confirmation because Colby, the grandson of the late CIA director, William Colby, has some controversial views that not everybody in the party loves, but he'll be confirmed and the vice president will be happy. All right, House and Senate, of course, both in. 10 o'clock, Matt Whitaker. Some of you know Matt Whitaker. He was the former U.S. attorney in Iowa, acting attorney general, and got a plum job outside his known lane to be ambassador to NATO. So he and two top State Department nominees are before Senate Foreign Relations today, and they will be peppered with aggressive questions from Democrats about NATO and Europe and Zelensky and the cutoff of aid from last night. I'll be curious to see how Matt Whitaker does in this new
Oh,
realm.
he'll crush it. I'm
He
telling you.
will. He'll do. I don't mean whether he'll do well or not. I mean how combative he'll be with the Democrats.
I think he'll be very. I mean, Matt Whitaker, is a really smart guy, so I'd be careful of coming at that guy. I mean,
Yep.
he's not somebody to like. This is not a wallflower to be coming at. He will come at you, and with really sharp. I mean, so this will be interesting because
Yes.
they've got the two deputy secretary of state nominees up as well, and they really want to go after them both on tariffs and on Ukraine, and we'll see
Yep.
what happens.
I recommend at the end of this program, if you're looking for something to do, I recommend you watch that hearing. It's going to be a scorcher, as they say on Capitol Hill. 10:30, House Republican leadership holds a press conference in the Republican National Committee lobby, where Sean has picked up many a pizza and orders of Kung Pao chicken. 10:45, the House Democratic Women's Caucus holds a press conference. And then at noon, Chuck Charles Schumer holds a press conference to talk about the president's speech tonight. All right. So the first lady's box is filled with people. Some you've heard of, some you haven't. The Laken Riley's family, the family of the gentleman killed in Pennsylvania when Donald Trump attempted assassination on his life. Other people connected to the crimes of illegal immigrants, people connected to trans teens, trans athletes in women's sports. All of these themes, law enforcement, all of these themes represented in the First Lady's box. And I will start out the conversation about tonight by saying what I believe is the greatest single misunderstanding Democrats have about Donald Trump, which is he talks largely about policies that are popular, not just popular with the extreme MAGA base, but every person in the First Lady's box today is related to an issue that is not popular in Chevy Chase. It's not popular amongst the Democratic caucus in the House or the Senate. It's not popular in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But you know what? It probably is popular in Madison, Wisconsin, and parts of Berkeley. So, Sean, tell
the
us
south
about
side of Boston.
yeah, exactly. Tell us about tonight's event. What you see as the president's strategy, and then we'll talk about the Democrats' strategy.
Yeah, so there's the I don't even want to characterize it, but I mean the guest that you mentioned who will illuminate some policy or issue, right? So he's also got a guy named Mark and Malphine Fogel from Butler, Pennsylvania, who's was held hostage by the Russian government. So he's got, I mean, those are all, and I say this with a head cold, but they're like the props. They illuminate the policy that he wants to talk to. Everybody gets up and claps. It draws distinctions. But my expectation is you're going to find it's like tonight's going to be like the Joe Rogan Experience joint address. I think for the first 40 minutes, he's going to go through a recitation of the last 42 days and what they've done to fulfill the president's campaign promises, to close the border, to address fentanyl, to bring American investment home. And I know we didn't talk about it, but yesterday's investment of another $100 billion on top of the Sony investment. I mean, the Apple investment, on the Masasan investment. I mean, we're talking billions and hundreds of billions of dollars being invested in the United States. I think the president's going to point that out, what he's doing to bring jobs and manufacturing and investment back to America. He's going to talk about addressing all of the things that he has done to fulfill his campaign promises, and then obviously hit on these social, cultural aspects as well. And then I think he's going to get into a lot of aspirational stuff. And that's everything from like going to space to cancer and other things. But he will talk about where he sees America and this idea of renewing the American dream.
Dan.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. It's promises made, promises kept. He's going to talk about, all the changes that he's implemented here. I'll be curious how much attention is put on DOGE, or whether it's just kind of part of that promises made, promises kept, because it's been dominating the headlines a lot recently. But I would imagine they want to try to broaden this out to, other stuff that they've accomplished. We talked about it yesterday, how much focus is on the economy, which is a little bit of a growing Achilles heel. Again, it's only 6 weeks in, but people's patience, is also thin. And then I think, for the Democratic Party, and I don't know, Mark, if you want to go there or you want to just stay. Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest challenge, and I wrote about this yesterday afternoon, is on a lot of these issues, as you say, Mark, they are 80-20, 70-30 issues. Like, just take Trump out of it. If you put in a vacuum, should we seal the border and stop the flow across of illegal immigrants? It is an 80-20. I think the problem for the Democrats is they don't see a lot of this as problems.
Right.
So they say, oh, with DOGE, oh, well, sure, there's some bad spending, but they don't really believe it. Like, at its core, what they're upset about is the status quo is changing. And that's a problem, because if they, try to have props and they interrupt and they have, people who are fired by the federal government, I think what it's going to tell voters is we just want the status quo, when overwhelmingly voters say we want the status, we want change, we want these problems, they are problems, and we want them solved.
Dan, I'm glad you brought up the props thing, because obviously that was, there was a lot of discussion in the morning reads about this, what they may do. It's funny, one of them was bring eggs. And I'm like, okay, so let's just be clear. You guys haven't said a word on inflation or on egg prices that's caused by the bird flu for 4 years. And suddenly now you want to bring eggs and cartons of eggs to a State of the Union 48 days into a new administration. It's just really rich that suddenly inflation is a big deal for Democrats, which is what the president ran on. I think he's tackling it. And that's part of what causes inflation is government spending. So if you're reducing government spending, you are by default actually addressing inflation. But I think that it's rich for a bunch of Democrats to sit around now and talk about the effect of inflation who've sat silent. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so if you're going to talk about it, you have to be able to say, as I said, for the last 3 years, inflation is this, and this is the policies. But you can't just wake up one day, come to Jesus because inflation's a big deal now that the parties have switched after you sat silent for 3 years.
One thing
a lot of them didn't. I mean, a lot of members of Congress did say. Joe Biden, as we said, was fairly silent about it. But look, Sean, the flip side to that is Republicans bragged that they could deal with it quickly. I mean,
I know. I'm not saying that you can't. Look, it's politics,
and they haven't. And when stuff like natural disasters and other things fed inflation under Biden, there was no sympathy about, this is not something Joe Biden, like, part of that was to get out of COVID, right?
I think you'll see some of the policies known, like on energy and on tariffs, even though most economists disagree with them. I think you'll see a section tonight saying, here's what I'm doing to bring down prices. I think you'll see.
So can I just ask, Dan, I mean, just your take on this. Like, I'm a lover of earned media stunts. However, that being said, I do think, and I will say it on both sides for everyone in the chat who wants to, like, I don't think it's appropriate when a president of the United States is addressing a joint session of Congress or a foreign leader for stunts to occur. So on either side, I don't think it's appropriate, just for everyone.
Is yelling you lie?
I was going to use that example.
No, I didn't say when Joe.
I'm asking if it is. In other words,
I don't think it's appropriate. Like, if you want to have plenty of outlets to express your displeasure or disagreement, standing up at a State of the Union, I think is a sign of disrespect. And so I would say it on either party.
There'll be some of that. There'll be some of that tonight.
I mean, what is the funny part is, I think that where we are on both sides now is that there's almost a reward for doing it.
I mean, that's what I was going to say about this is, I think, unfortunately, if you're a backbencher, or I'm going to, use this generally speaking, a no-name member of Congress, of which 80-90% of them are, if you pull a stunt, if you yell, you lie, or you have some clever sign. By the way,
there's just one. There's one bathroom taker.
I'll get him on the way.
You will get invited on MSNBC, right? Yeah. You will become a kind of progressive celebrity. You will drastically increase your email list, your fundraising list. So you will benefit in the kind of tactical short run for kind of pulling the stunt. I also wonder if, when the president is either going down or coming up out of the well, if some Democrat does not get in his face and try to say something and have it captured on camera and make it go viral immediately that I confronted the president. to your point, Sean, I just don't think that is one appropriate in that forum, but I think it's where both sides are increasingly going when it's the other president. I also just think on certain issues, like if you challenge him again on Doge, like what is it that you're challenging? If it is just the idea that you're firing federal workers, most people believe the federal government should be shrunk. So like you want to do it on a winning issue, not like just in general because you're pissed.
They clearly think, even Richie Torres, who we all think is a smart guy, even Richie Torres thinks if you have someone who's a sympathetic speaker, whose job sounds like it was good, doing good, that can win the argument.
Right.
I remain
and a couple of them, I think Schumer has a disabled vet that's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, those, again, I think you're going to get a little bit more sympathy out of that. But at the end of the day, still, it also depends on what they did or whatever. I will tell you a little side note. Dan probably knows this from his side. There's there's 3 groups of members. Well, I'll make it 4 now. Let's start at the bottom. Number 4 are the members who are going to skip it because they don't want to go, because they want to make a spectacle, whatever. Number 3 are the members that just are regular, who cares members. They'll show up, they'll sit, whatever. Number 2 members are the members of the party in power. So right now, Republicans that will literally, probably about now, go down to the House floor and camp out on an aisle seat so they will be in the C-SPAN shot to greet the president. And then there are those, number 1 on my list, are those members of either party that don't care which party is in power, but want a front row seat because they would rather be on TV no matter which party. And it is amazing the number of members that will go down to the floor at this hour to start to camp out like it's
Can you send a staffer? Can you send a staffer to hold your space?
No, staff doesn't. Only leadership staff has floor privileges, and you would literally get it. You get it on your iPad.
But they're not going to sit on the floor for 12 hours.
They'll either put some. Oh, trust me, some of them.
You can put some. You can put a coat on.
You can put your stuff there, but you get what the members who really care will start to go down and camp out. And there's not that many. There's only like 5 or 6. But trust me, and then there's a bunch that will do the coat and the stuff. But I've seen it before where other members will go down and move the coat and the stuff to a seat next to them and take that.
He's right.
All right. So one of the things that the press is barely covering is the extraordinary decline in border crossings. I mean, the number's like at a 20-year low. It's a promise. That's a promise made, promise kept. You know, if this were a Democratic president, it would be a front page story. Sean first, then Dan. What will Democrats do and what should they do when Donald Trump announces that today?
I think there'll be 2 groups of Democrats. There'll be some that stand up and applaud. Border districts, swing districts will stand and applaud. Others will sit and do nothing. What they should do is stand and applaud because it's a national security issue, not a bipartisan issue.
Correct answer, Dan.
Well, I think to be fair, the decline started under Biden in the last few months, and that was covered. That was in the press leading into Trump coming in. No, it was. The border crossings around October began to kind of go down pretty significantly.
They did, correct.
I totally agree with Sean. Everyone who's thinking of who's up in 26 will absolutely spring out of their seat. Jeanne Shaheen may be the first one up to applaud. I'll be curious about the 2028ers. You know, because I think some of them will want to sit on their hands, and I would imagine a few will get up. But look, it was true in 2024. It's true today. This issue splits the Democratic Party right in half. They still don't, know how to talk about it. And I go back to there's a significant, I think, segment of the caucus that doesn't think this is a problem and thinks it's a faux outrage generated by, cable TV.
Right. So there's certain people like Rahm Emanuel and Pat Buchanan and Donald Trump who can read the newspaper and come up with a great issue and talk about it all day and drive the news. Okay. Put up 107, please. So here's a truth from Donald Trump this morning. It's not a brand new issue. He's talked about stuff like this before. But, and I don't know whether it's going to be in this speech or not, but it's just an example. 107, please. This is just an example of stuff, right? So he says, as if we've all been thinking about this, that no university that doesn't deal with illegal protests the way he wants them dealt with is going to get federal funding. He doesn't. He wants people from overseas sent back to their countries. He wants American students expelled and arrested, and you can't wear masks. And this is just an example of his ability. Again, he's not the only one who's ever had it, but he has it better than any Democrat now to just come up with stuff that's going to test 70-30, maybe 60-40, but at least 60-40, and drive the left crazy. Do you guys want to say anything about that?
I mean, one, the fact he's up at 4:30 in the morning, you know, on the day of a State of the Union is impressive. Like, you know, he's doing some party pumps, I guess, in the morning. But
Bing, 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 bing.
yeah, exactly. Just gets the blood flowing early. But I mean, look, as you say, you know what it is? You're going to talk about it in the morning. It puts us on our back foot. Like, what was maybe the second biggest wedge issue? The Israel and Palestine and West Bank and college students and protests. Like, the guy knows how to split the Democratic Party.
Three things. Number one, I do worry about how early he was up on a day like today, because you got to be on your A game at 9 p.m. tonight. So hopefully he gets some rest and then jacks himself up with a bunch of Diet Cokes. Two,
that RFK hasn't banned yet. Right.
That's right. Number two is on that issue in particular. I do think it's fascinating how the issue is still prevalent, and yet we don't hear about the protests anymore. It's interesting how the tone and tenor has shifted. And I'll go back on issue 3, just on the border. It's not just how many people are crossing. There's a great story in the Wall Street Journal the other day about how these folks who have been coming up through South America, crossing rivers, et cetera, are literally turning back, traversing the same dangerous country home because they know they are not welcome in the United States and will be sent back. And that's why leadership really matters. It's not just how many people cross, it's how many people don't come.
Right. So we've already said Democratic leadership is asking their caucuses, don't make a scene, don't do stunts, bring someone with you who represents the best of the American federal workforce. We've said there'll be stunts. So here's another thing the Democrats are doing today. I'm curious if you guys think this is effective. 105, please. So Semaphore reports that they're basically doing a Radio Row media day with a bunch of podcasters of some prominence. Hakeem Jeffries is hosting members of Congress guests and a dozen digital creators. Brian Tyler Cohn, Jessica Yellen, Crooked Media. Dan, is this impressive, meaningless, stupid?
Oh, no, this is good. I mean, this is very good. It is a start. That influencer list is, you know, it's not, their audience is not Joe Rogan and people like that, but like, this is a start. This is not sitting down with MSNBC and, you know, PBS and, you know, NewsHour. Like, they are trying to reach a broader audience. They are trying to get members to sit, to, you know, to be more nimble. The challenge is if you say 50 different things, then you're just scattering bullets kind of in different directions. I will be curious if there is a kind of thematic, let's say 3 messages that they're hoping to drive and then get out into the public. But I think this is a good start for the party.
Sean.
I echo Dan. I mean, it's a good start. It's smart for them to do it. It shows that they actually get the message. I'm surprised. Like, if I, you know, now to add the critical piece of this, I am surprised, like, those, like, I would be going more for the mommy blogger type that has, to your point, that isn't your traditional base, that has I mean, some of the most influential people in America right now have some of those. So I would have gone bigger on that. And then to Dan's point, it's a tactic to invite people. I have a phrase when I do media training where I say, don't put the secretary in press secretary. That's a tactic. So what are they doing to Dan's thing? What's missing in that story is, you know, the conference will be briefing him at 4 o'clock. Schumer will be meeting him at 6. Like, you want to surround them with a unified theme of what are we doing? Here's our tactics. Here's our message. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe they're doing that, but I would say that if just inviting them is a good start, but you need to basically, you know, wow them all day long with a series of people and messages that they are going to be writing this amazing story. Go read Jessica Reed Krause's thing yesterday on Melania Trump. She does a fantastic job because when she goes to an event, people give her access. They explain everything. She meets a ton of people, and then she writes a brilliant piece surmising what happened.
And now that's the other thing too, which is, and we talk about this, the Trump team is phenomenal at this. They were in the campaign, they were now. They give backstage access, right? Like, you kind of like, I, who love politics, have seen a lot of this. I watch the videos when they're walking through the West Wing or they're coming up through Air Force One and they're walking down. Like, the party needs to tease a little more with that stuff.
I agree with both of you about all this. We got to get to Zelensky and tariffs. But Sean, I can't say everything I know at this point. We talked about the anchor lunch yesterday. What do you know that you can say about who's invited to the anchor lunch today?
Mark Halperin invited?
I can't say everything, but I can say, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I can say I think we'll be talking about this tonight at 6 o'clock on two-way tonight. So I can say that.
According
So
to
stay tuned. So stay tuned. All right, very quickly, guys, because we want to finish on time here. Sean, what is the president's scheme here? I'm using scheme in the British sense. What's he, by cutting off the military aid to Ukraine, by continuing to have the vice president and the president himself say this guy's got to get on with the program? What is the president hoping to do? Crush his spirit?
No,
Get him to,
compel
what's
him,
he trying to do?
get him back in line is the bottom line, right?
What does that mean? But what's it? How would you define that?
So I think that as I said yesterday, their view was, if you want to come to America, be ready to sign this deal. We'll give you commercial support to know that as a deterrent to peace. And instead, again, their view, which is you came, you disrespected us, you came almost with an attitude as if you were doing us a favor. And I think the president's view is, and then by the way, you ran off to Europe, still haven't said anything about what we did, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is, all right, dude, here's the deal. You don't appreciate what we're doing. You don't want to thank us. Great. Then go hang out with all of your European buddies and see what they can do. Because right now he's forcing him into a corner to say, fine, I'll sign exactly what I said yesterday. Sign the deal, apologize, say thank you, and we got you. But he's refusing to do that. And so I think the answer is the president's like, great, you don't think that I'm worth it? You don't think the United States is there? We'll show you.
I mean, he's thanked us so many times, I think I've lost count. I mean, look, they feel disrespected. I mean, this is like, the Sopranos a little bit. I mean, they want him to sign the deal and accept the fact you're going to lose land. We're not going to provide your security and like deal with it. I mean, that is basically like, you got to get off of like anything changing. I think one of the bigger questions, though, is like, I get we want to bring Russia and Putin to the table. And I get giving them like an olive branch, but it feels like every day we're giving them more and more olive branches. And I'm not sure what message are we driving to them? The administration, and I'm glad, is saying Putin's going to have to give certain things. But boy, do we seem to be kind of, pounding Zelensky down to say, like, we're going to shove this down your throat and you need to deal with this. And Vladimir Putin, I'll give you roses. I'll give you chocolate. I'll go pick you up in your car. Sean, we've stopped cyber. We're talking about lifting sanctions. We vetoed a UN resolution. There's 3 other items here. And we haven't even started to negotiate. It's like, please come to the table. Pretty please. I
think the idea is, look, we had a deal ready to go. The Europeans were on board, everything. And then Zelensky came and had.
But that was a minerals deal. That was not
no. It was part of a bigger broad. That was part of the whole thing. If we do the minerals deal, we ally with you commercially. That guarantees as a deterrent. And so what Zelensky did was undermine Trump's ability to get this deal done. And therefore, Trump's like, great, you don't want me, you don't want the deal, go do it on your own.
I think they secretly, I'm speculating, I don't know this. I think they secretly talked, and this whole thing is all gamed out. He already knows what Putin will agree to. He already knows the deal he's driving towards. And all of this is to make Zelensky accept a deal that he's not going to be enthusiastic about. And the kowtowing stuff to Putin is just part of the whole mood music of the thing. It doesn't mean anything. That's what I think. All right. Really quick, guys. I mean, rapid round. Dan, what does the president do if the tariff thing goes south and there start to be economic problems and nobody backs down and we're in a trade war? What's the off ramp?
He's gonna define victory, declare it, and get out.
Sean?
I think it depends on how long. He's already expressed acknowledgement that there may be some short-term pain. So he expects there to be some market disruption and some short-term stuff, but he's going to relish every announcement. As I mentioned, the one yesterday from Taiwan to build $100 billion to build semiconductors in Arizona and around the country. So he will talk about that. My only concern on this is there are certain things that we don't have in the United States. There's a story, the Farm Bureau has been pounding this for a while. There's fertilizer in Canada that we have some in Michigan, I'm well aware of, but almost 90% of this fertilizer comes from Canada. You cannot replicate certain things like that for our agricultural growers. And like I'm well aware of, the other place, by the way, that they do have some of this is Russia. So the question is, what are we doing? Because we're going to hurt agricultural workers. So I get the bigger, broader picture. And the president's had huge success driving industry back. We talked about Honda now announcing that they're going to make the Civic in Indiana, not Mexico. That's fantastic. It's a huge win for America. But at the end of the day, we've got to be a little bit careful about whether or not there are some industries that cannot be replicated in America that will have an adverse effect on our growers, our ranchers, our farmers, and our consumers.
All right, we'll see what happens with the tariffs. We'll be covering that all week and beyond. Noah reminds me that in the olden days, the anchor lunch with the president on the day of the State of the Union was just Dan, Tom, and Peter. Just Dan, Tom, and Peter in the olden days. And now, of course, it's been expanded. And again, watch to see who's included and who's not today. All right.
Now it's Mark, Dan, and Sean, you said?
Exactly.
Well, by the way, like I told you before, people have a good, have traditionally walked up to President Trump and said, can I say this on the record? Can I do that? And that turns into a food fight for everyone that's trying to staff it. But I will tell you that, like, it's supposed to be off the record, so we'll see how quickly that devolves.
Yes, we will. Here's Meghan McCain of Two Way, and of course of Meghan McCain's Happy Hour on Two Way. Here's Mondays and Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern time as my lead-in on Two Way tonight. Meghan, good morning. How are your babies?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry this was last minute, which is why I'm dressed up.
Yeah, now you look just fine. As you said to,
it works for Elon Musk. It works for you.
Exactly. As you said to one of your community members yesterday, all good. Better to look good. Meghan, tell us about, you've been on this for a long time through your network and friends and your communities. Tell us about the trans issue and your confusion over how the Democrats are approaching it.
Well, one of the things I was so excited about when President Trump got elected was his executive order about keeping biological men out of women's sports. It's a cornerstone issue. And by the way, we're just wearing this anyway. This is Jennifer Say, who is the professional athlete turned advocate who we've met through Independent Women's Forum. This is her clothing line, XXXY Athletics, which is like, is a thing where you can buy the hats and it gives money towards the cause. It's for a lot of people like me, this has been like the third rail issue that kind of got you canceled from social circles. At least a lot of the women I work with at Independent Women's Forum, it's really important to me. I, like so many other people, were radicalized by Leah Thomas, the trans swimmer who, if you look at the pictures online, beat all the biological women, including Riley Gaines, who's become just a force in this space. And I was really, really disappointed to see every single Democrat senator vote yesterday against it. I was actually really shocked to see every single Democrat. This is an 80-20 issue. 80% of the American public agrees with me. Now, people may be bullied into silence on it. People may not want to talk about it, but they're sure as hell going to vote in the voting booth on my side. I don't understand where someone like John Fetterman, who, Bill Maher last week said should be the nominee for the Democrat Party. I will never vote for anyone in any space who is on the other side of this issue. It is a hard line for me. Tonight at the president's speech, he is bringing Peyton McNabb, who is a 19-year-old volleyball player who I have met, who suffered a traumatic brain injury by being hit in the head by a biological male volleyball player that hit her so badly she had to be hospitalized and still suffers long-term damage. She can tell her own story, but she has like dizzy spells, memory issues, sight issues. I had a long conversation with her when I saw her a few months ago about it. And among the things that is so jarring about her story is a lot of doctors and people didn't want to help her because of the politics of how she got injured. I have 2 young daughters. I'm a woman myself. I'm over it. I don't want to be put in a situation where women can have traumatic brain injuries and Democrats are going to say it's okay. I will die on this hill. And I'm disappointed. This is not about, and I have actually, of all things, right before I got on, my friend Andy Cohen's going after me on Twitter about this. I've been on his show like 40 times. We're friends. I wouldn't have taken this publicly about it, but this is what happens. If you come out on my side on this issue, you're just going to get the living hell beaten out of you socially and in all liberal and elite circles. But I don't care. I don't want women to feel unsafe in locker rooms. I don't want women to have traumatic brain injuries. And I don't want women to not be able to get the scholarships and all the things that they deserve by working so hard in athletics and have it taken away from them. And I hate that this is like this. I hate that it's such a partisan issue. I don't understand how Democrats don't understand. I don't understand. Do you want your daughter to have a traumatic brain injury because she decides to play volleyball? You're okay with that? Why? Why are you okay with violence against women as long as it's a trans player doing it?
Dan, thank you, Meghan. Dan.
Yeah.
Answer it, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think they condone injuries. Look, I think this issue splits the Democratic Party. I mean, even looking at the comments around the vote yesterday, it was often not like on the issue. It was, oh, we don't think this is really still an issue in the country, or local jurisdictions are dealing with it, so we don't need federal legislation. Like, nobody is explicitly saying, I am okay with men or, big boys playing girls sports, which is telling, to Megan's point, it's an 80-20 issue. Look, I think this causes Megan and people on the right to bang their head against the wall the way people on the left do about gun control, right? It's like an 80-20 issue if you say, should we ban, military assault weapons, right? But it doesn't happen. I agree with you. I think for the Democratic Party to move forward, it's going to have to kind of, get off the pot here, that we can't keep trying to say like, oh, there's nothing to see here. And this goes to what I said to start the show on a lot of this. Democrats don't believe there are problems. That's the biggest issue for us. Deep down, we think this is a fake issue. We think the, border is a fake issue. We think Doge is a fake issue. They're not. And it's one of the reasons we're in the minority.
Sean,
Rahm Emanuel went on
sorry,
Bill
go
Maher, said he didn't want to hear anything about bathrooms from Democrats ever again. And he basically was signaling that, like, let this issue go. And I just don't do Democrats want to lose forever. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people, including famous people, by the way, who will reach out to me privately. They don't want to do what I do. They don't want to do what Sean and Mark and Dan does. I get it. You don't want to not be invited to the cool kids parties. You want to go to the Oscar parties. I get it. I don't give a shit. But I am saying they will vote the way I do. They will. They'll do it privately. So again, you want to make this a big issue, but I'm telling you, whatever Democrat runs next time, I will be out there again with Independence Women Forum, Riley Gaines. We get huge crowds, huge numbers, tons of moms, tons of women coming out, tons of dads too, by the way. I will beat this like a drum into the ground. If Democrats want to run on this issue, fine. It's your funeral.
Sean.
I mean, I'm pretty clear where I stand on this issue, so I don't. I will just say I think the interesting thing, Dan, on the party thing is it's one thing to treat people with respect, right? So if people are going through an issue or whatever, I don't think we should marginalize them or hurt them, but that doesn't mean that the lowest common denominator gets all of the benefits, right? And that's the problem, is that there are ways and there are alternatives to address this. And where the Democratic Party is right now is saying, no. They get full access to whatever. And there are legitimate violence concerns, healthcare concerns, et cetera, that just aren't being acknowledged. And then also opportunities, which is the big thing. And I think the hypocrisy in this issue, aside from all the other things that have been enumerated, is the biggest thing. Women fought for years valiantly for opportunities so that people like my daughter could actually have scholarships and opportunity, and now are sitting idly by on a sideline while men take back those opportunities that were awarded to them. And I just think it is amazing how many women were able to stand up in the face of I mean, it's the reverse of what's happening. They stood up in a culture that, traditionally shunned them and fought hard for rights that decades of women after them would benefit for, and now are silent as they get stripped away.
I think they just think if they give an inch, they're going to lose a mile. But to your point, Megan, anyone with kids says, I got a real problem with this. Like, we got teenage boys who are 15, and one of them's getting pretty big, like physically big, strong, power. He doesn't even know his strength yet, right? Like, he bumps into people kind of like our other kids, and you're like, 2 years ago, you would not have knocked him over. Now you're a big kid, right? It's just part of the awkwardness of puberty. And like, most people look at that and say, I have a problem if we put the sexes together to play soccer right now, right? Like, it just causes them issues.
As Sean,
sport. Sorry, Mark, to interrupt.
No, you go.
It is the sports. That's a big part of it. But also, like, to be a woman, and Sean, do you know this? Like, anyone who has women around them, you all know this. Like, there are just certain things you learn as you're a woman in society about danger, about like situations you shouldn't be in. You have like instincts that you're like, this is a dangerous situation. And what you're asking me to do is to go into a locker room with someone with male genitals, possibly naked around me. That's not safe for me. I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't want to be told by society that I now have to be okay with that. And Riley Gaines has really it's an early morning show. You can just look it up. Very intense stories about some of the situations she was put in. I have little girls. I don't want them to think that someone being naked around them in any situation where it's not consensual as adults is something they should be okay with. And I don't understand why Democrats want me to feel this way. I just don't understand why this is so hard to understand. And I would also just like to preface this with like, I've been nominated for a GLAAD award. I have a Trevor Project award. I did a lot of advocacy to support gay marriage. I have a lot of gay friends in my life. Some of them I've lost over this issue. Some of them agree with me, again, quietly. It just all depends on the person. This is not about LGBT rights. This is about women's safety and women's equality. And for some reason, and I think this is where like internalized misogyny in the culture comes in, Democrats saying, well, you know what? One girl with brain damage who had to be hospitalized for months on end that can't see right now, like, it's okay. One girl like Peyton McNabb, who's going to come today. What kind of fucking message is that? One brain damaged girl is okay? What I just don't understand a party that really emphasizes women, their women candidates, Kamala, having the two female nominees for president. But at the same time, it's like if the culture, I don't know, jigsaw doesn't fit the right way, then you're okay with it. I've talked to this woman. I've talked to her family. It has screwed up her life. It has screwed up her life. She can't do the things that she wanted to do, completely ruin her athletic career. Isn't one enough? And then, by the way, there's plenty more. Peyton is just the one who's being brought in front of the president today.
Watch in the hall tonight how Democrats handle this issue, the violent crimes committed by people in the country illegally. Watch their faces. Watch how they handle it politically. These are wedge issues. They're issues that Donald Trump exploits, but they're also real issues in the real lives of tens of millions of Americans like Megan, who care passionately about them and do not understand where the Democratic Party has been on them. Okay, Megan, can you hang out with us for the rest?
Yes, I can. Sorry to get
all
heated.
Right.
This is
All right, let's
issue
bring
in my
Kath.
life.
Thank you for staying with us and for coming in and being so clear and passionate about it. Kathy, welcome in. Thank you for joining. After you unmute, tell us where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Hey, I'm deep in the heart of Central Texas, next to what's known as the Great Place, Fort Cavasso / Fort Hood. My history is I'm a veteran. I was also a government employee, transitioned into, I'll call it the Beltway world of defense contracting. And thank God I was able to come back to Texas during COVID to my house. Now, for you New Yorkers, I'm also from New York, and there's a long story there. And I love them both, but that's a different conversation. I had two issues. One was there was a tweet from Chris Cuomo this morning that kind of caught my attention, that the tariffs were playing with creating a recession. And my question to everybody and anybody is, why don't people see the ledge we're coming to on the debt and understand that it's in my opinion, an existential issue for our country? I don't understand why people don't see that. My grandmother lived through World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, and I grew up hearing stories about how everybody pulled together. Let's, get off the ledge. We can't do it. And
Okay, let us answer that one. We'll get to your second question. I'll go first. The voters don't demand it. The voters pay lip service to it, but they don't really demand it. And they're not willing to deal as adults with the tough choices. Two, Donald Trump has cleverly matched the Democrats in demagoguing entitlements and saying the way you save the programs is by not changing them, which of course is wrong. It means they'll go broke. Three, we haven't really paid a price for it. This people have been warning about this my entire career. We haven't really paid a price yet. And so it's difficult to convince people it's an emergency when it's not. And lastly, you can only do this in a bipartisan way, in a big grand bargain. And we're just we're not at a phase right now where this president or the previous president or the president before him or the president before him,
or the
four out of five who put central to their campaigns when they ran, I will unite the country and do difficult things in a bipartisan way. Unfortunately, our political climate will not allow this to be bipartisan. And if you can't be bipartisan, it won't be done. Sean.
Don't make me run is what I'm saying, because I have voted both ways. And I have, like Megan, I have nothing but the truth to talk about, having been in the military.
But you've got to organize the grassroots to say not just demagoguery, balance the budget,
give me
cut
a
waste.
platform.
Well, you got to say we got to make adult choices. Here's a plan that keep Social Security intact for current retirees and those approaching retirement. Here's a plan that keeps Medicare available to folks who currently are using it. But here's also a plan to make the kind of changes in the actuarial table and in benefits and in the retirement age and everything else that makes the program solvent and helps restore fiscal sanity. But you have to lead a grassroots movement, because if you just ask the politicians to do it, they'll respond to the current will of the people, which is to pretend it's not happening. Sean.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, you mentioned tariffs. I mean, tariffs are I think, long-term wise, are less of a revenue raiser. I know that there's an element of that, but look, I've been saying this for a long time. I believe both parties have screwed us on the debt. And I think any movement forward, I get where the big dollars are, but at the end of the day, like any plan, you have to start with the small before you get to the big. So any effort towards deficit reduction is a good move in my book. And I'm glad that what he's doing, because I will tell you, I think China is the greatest existential threat that our country faces on numerous fronts, and the national debt does not allow us to do what we need to do to prepare to address that. So if we don't get serious, we're literally doing generations to come a disservice. I mean, the CNO of the former CNO now, had in her office a 2027 countdown clock, because that's how serious the military takes the threat from China. If we're willing to be that obvious about the threat that we have and not acknowledge it, then it's our fault at some point as voters. So that's where I come down on this. I do think, it's funny you mentioned being in the military. You'll know that for those of us who got in a while, I can't remember when, you got either 20-year retirement or nothing, right? So if you served 19 years and you walked away, and then the military went to what they call a blended retirement, where you can now basically get a TSP, a 401k, because a lot of people didn't want to serve 20 years. That made sense. It was smart. And yet we don't address the same kind of smart look at Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Social Security is something that we shouldn't bind people to in the way that we did. There's a way to do this to give people a better retirement than, it was never intended to do that. And we've created a scam where we tell people you can retire on Social Security, which it never was intended to do. And we take in money, we give it away, and then we figure out how to pay back the IOUs. There's a better, smarter way that we can be doing this for people. It just takes leadership.
Dan.
I agree with both of you guys. The only thing I would add is, ultimately, if you want to solve this, it requires both spending cuts and increased revenues.
Right.
And that's how you would, get a bipartisan deal.
But it really requires this growth. It really requires.
Well, it's all of the above. But you would, if you wanted to make a bipartisan deal, you'd have to say, because the math is there. It's to Sean's point and Mark's point, we're going to have to touch the big budget drivers of the entitlements and defense spending. And we're going to have to raise some revenue and try to create conditions for economic growth. You can't just look, when Bill Clinton had surpluses, what was the first thing George W. Bush said? Cut taxes.
Megan.
I have nothing substantial to add to this. I'm sorry.
All right.
You guys all covered it very well.
Thank you. Kathy, real quick, your second topic, please.
Last week, OPM put out a RIF guidance memo, and I really did a little bit of research, but can't understand it. Everybody was losing their mind and kerfuffle about the RIF. How it's been handled is one conversation, but in there buried is a statement more than once calling out. And the first one was, agencies should focus maximum elimination, and this is what I'm going to say, of functions not statutorily mandated.
Yeah.
Does that mean everything Congress has not made into an agency or something is fair game? Goodbye.
Could be.
I think so.
I could have fun with that.
Hang on. Let me get you. I've got Dan say something, and then I'll.
Yeah. Look, they're looking.
I have it bookmarked.
You have unions, you have stuff in law about what you can and cannot touch. And so they're trying to identify the places where there is flexibility to downsize. That's just the reality of it. So it's not surprising that a statement like that would be in there.
That caught my attention. I was a single mother. That's why I left the government. It did not pay me enough. And I'm an economist of the single mother math, budget. We need single mothers running the budget right now. What do you need?
Here's your answer. The Congressional Budget Office tracks authorizations of appropriations that have specified expiration dates and identifies annually appropriations that are provided for authorizations that have expired or will by the end of the current fiscal year. This
Nice.
is CBO, right? For this current report, CBO identified 1,264 authorizations of appropriations that expired before the fiscal year of 2024 and 251 authorizations that are set to expire before the end of this fiscal year. CBO also found $516 billion in appropriations for 2024 that was associated with 491 expired authorizations of appropriations.
Sean, can you translate that into two-way English?
Yeah, basically what that means is that we in the federal government keep paying for stuff that Congress hasn't told us they want to the tune of that much money. So right now what's happening is Congress is saying you can't get rid of things that we've appropriated or authorized or both. And so the federal government's saying, great, then we'll go hunting where you haven't authorized and you haven't appropriated, and we'll just start clawing back that to the tune of close to $1 trillion.
Great. Kathy, thanks for coming on.
And
Grateful
one
to you.
last thing, Megan, I'll be there tonight. I ran track Title IX in the 70s, and I have stories about what they're getting ready to lose.
Kathy, I really appreciate it. We all need to lock in and voice as much as possible. I know a lot of people are scared because there's so much societal backlash. I don't care. I don't want any more girls to get injured. People keep tweeting me. There's some basketball game that just happened where in Massachusetts where 3 girls were injured so badly in a basketball match they had to cut it early. I just don't understand it. I'm never going to understand. I'm never going to understand it. But thank you.
Kathy, thank you. All right, new topic, I think. John, welcome in. Tell folks where you are and then about the Zelensky cards.
Thanks. I'm in Northern California. Love the platform. I've recommended it many times. I don't know yet a Democrat who's taken it up, so I'm sorry for that.
Keep asking them. They're just a little gun
I do
shy.
keep asking. I learned immense amount. I love the platform.
Thank you.
The point about Zelensky is that he does have cards, and effectively by saying no, and by trying to reframe the issue. And it's not that Trump is not dominant. Trump is dominant. And I would agree with Sean that what Zelensky ought to do is sign the deal and then move on. But the fear is that if you read the Institute for for the Study of War, they have been documenting for months that Russia remains in a maximalist position, which is effectively the elimination of Ukraine as a country and as a culture. And the fear, I think, is not only about guarantees, but when Wyckoff says that they're starting with the a little bit excited here, with a position that Russia put forward, which makes Ukraine a vassal state, that's hugely alarming to me. And I think the end game of what remains as Ukraine is really, really critical. And from Zelensky's point of view, which I think it is sensible to look at the other point of view, is sort of analogous to Israel. This is a war for existence, and because it's really clear in what they say and in how they behave, Russia intends to eliminate Ukraine. So they execute soldiers who surrender. They do take 20,000 or so of children out of the country. All of those things are accurate. And so I think that it's worth also considering Ukraine's position. And I can imagine, as a matter of fact, that there is a deal that might be agreed to. It's not clear, incidentally, that Putin is ready to agree to a deal. But if Trump would propose a solution, which Zelensky would view as so risky for his nation, he would say no a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months.
All right, John, thank you. Thank you for that, John. Megan
has a stake in this now. He's in
John, hold on. John, let us respond to all the great things you said. Megan.
Look, I don't think you're wrong. I do think Zelensky still has some cards, particularly because it looks like all of Europe and the UK supports him. I was really disappointed about how everything went down in the White House. I didn't think Zelensky behaved the way he should. I didn't like how Trump and JD Vance behaved. President and Vice President Vance. I don't want to call them by the first name. I know that's not respectful. But I actually brought this up on my show last night. Everybody keeps complaining that I need a better mic. I'm sorry, I'm in my bedroom. I'm not with my mic right now. Let's
Oh,
just
don't look at the chat. Come on.
okay.
Don't do that.
But
I hear you. I hear you fine. I don't know why other
Same here.
people can't. I hear you fine.
one of the things I was wondering, and maybe you have a response to this, is would it be better at this point, and John, I'd be curious about your take, if Zelensky stepped down for someone else? Someone I brought up last night was Vladimir Klitschko, the heavyweight champion boxer of the world, who used to be the former mayor of Kiev, also married to Hayden Panettiere for a long time, the actress. He's like a beloved figure in that area of the world. I don't know if that would possibly make a difference with negotiations. Also, just like physically and vibe wise, I'm sure he's someone Trump would like because he's so machismo. He looks like a Bond villain. I don't know if that's something that would help. I don't know anymore. This is like so above my pay grade. But I was really hoping for a peace deal and for the mineral deal to be signed.
Sean.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think in order for that to happen, Megan, we'd have to have elections, which is part of the problem. That and so it would help, I think, to have somebody new in there. But I don't know that time is on his side. I think maybe if he said, "I'll sign the deal and I'll step down," it might be good. But also remember, that's what Russia wants. They want a different leader. So it would be seen as a capitulation to some degree, which is not helpful in the overall scheme of things. But the bottom line, as I said all along, he needs to sign this deal, get a commercial agreement which puts U.S. interests aligned with them, and that will help him. But time is not on his side right now. The longer this takes, the more it's going to hurt. And remember, not only does Trump want peace, but he has used it as a well-deserved, by the way, bragging point that during his first 4 years, no land was taken, nothing was annexed, no wars broke out. He wants that talking point back for the right reasons because peace actually works. So remember what his end goal is. This is not, if Russia takes over Ukraine, if that's what the left thinks, that undermines what Trump thinks this is a talking point of strength. I'll prevented all that from happening. He does not want to allow Putin to do anything that would undermine that. And that's where the Dems just don't get it.
Dan.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing, John, is I'm not sure that Americans care. The majority of Americans really would care if Ukraine lost more land. I mean, I just think that is an unfortunate political reality. I wish they did. I think it would be very concerning. I thought about writing something about, as an analogy, if Kamala Harris had gotten elected and had treated Netanyahu the way we're treating Zelensky and treated, the situation with the Palestinians with olive branches the way we're giving to Putin, what would be the reaction? I think it'd be very fascinating. I think it'd be quite different. But the reality is Americans view their relationship with Israel differently than they do Ukraine. And, whether it should or shouldn't be, that's just the reality.
John, thank you.
I think there's no solution of which Ukraine does not lose Crimea and Donbass. And that's been advanced by some people like Victor David Hansen as the solution. But Institute of Study War basically argues that the current line of conflict is not a defensible space. That economically, what remains of Ukraine is not economically sufficient. Yep. You would have to arm to the teeth. That will basically fall on external support.
Yep. John, so I'm sorry. I got to cut you, John. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Great conversation. We got a lot of coming attractions to do. We do our coming attractions at the end rather than before the main feature. Sean, what do you have on tonight?
Lindy Lee and a guy named Dan Turrentine. We're giving him a shot.
Yeah.
I think the kid's got a future.
Can I ask, are you going to confront Lindsay about your criticisms of her?
I view my show the same way that Mark does. I treat everybody with respect. So I will ask her about, yes, that's the goal.
It's going to be a good episode. 6 o'clock, I'll be on with Two-Way Tonight, previewing tonight. And then 8:30, Dan and I and a bunch of other folks will join you all to pregame the president's speech, cover the speech, and then postgame it. Again, you're welcome to watch other platforms for one-way coverage, but if you want a two-way conversation and to sample all the coverage elsewhere, we'll be dipping in as we do on cable, broadcast TV. We'll be surfacing tweets of interest to try to get a sense of how people are reacting both around the country and inside Washington, where I will be tonight. And then tomorrow, Megan's show. Megan, you've got two great guests tomorrow at 5. Tell folks who that is.
Selena Zito, the amazing renegade reporter who covers Republicans, I think, better than anybody. And then we have Jennifer Say, who I ever had on to talk about all the things I just talked about, like the political risk Democrats are taking by coming out against this, the choice of President Trump to bring Peyton to the the speech tonight, and yeah, just gonna have more fun. I had so much fun last night talking about the Oscars with my
Yes, it's awesome.
variety.
It's a good episode. And then again, Thursday night at 7 Eastern time, if you want to learn more about the effects on tariffs, David Bonson will be doing a private event for a private two-way for members of the community. And you go to twoway.tv/TBG, the Bonson Group, to sign up and be part of our conversation about how tariffs might affect you. And 3 of us will be back tomorrow. Megan might drop in because we like when she does, for our sense of what happened at the speech tonight. So thanks to everybody for being on. Megan, thank you for joining us, and we'll see everybody
Sorry, I swore.
all sorts of places in the next
Have
few
a good
hours.
lunch, Mark.
So does
Thank
Dan.
you.
Dan's a big,